Let's take a look what happened in my life years ago when I was still having, like, when they say real job. So I wasn't a trainer, I wasn't a coach, but I was actually working in real companies. So, okay. So I will tell you about a case of introducing Kanban, a bit coincidentally. It actually worked for us. And I'm not saying that it's gonna work for you because it's always like case by case, but I hope that you will find some hints, something that you will be able to use even tomorrow or maybe the day after tomorrow at your work. So there is one huge slide, and I promise there will be no more slides with so much text, but I want to do some introduction. So I was appointed as project manager and product owner at the new project, which was to automate reports in financial reporting department. All of these reports were done totally manually, so copying Excel to Excel, and eventually they got some results. And the company was using SDLC as a company-wide project management method, and developers used Scrum. And I'm really saying Scrum because I know that I have a room full of Scrum people, and please don't ask me about Scrum because I have no idea about it. Everything I did was Pato Scrum, so just let's skip these questions, okay? The financial reporting department that we worked in was a group of 150 people, and they worked for 120 external clients and auditors. And they worked in annual, semi-annual, quarter and monthly cycles, which is important for us later. Our task was to deliver the reports, and these reports had non-negotiable deadlines. And we had this project budgeted for 15 months, and we also had a deployment calendar, which I received in January, and I had all my deployment dates till the end of the year. And our initial scope was to automate 10 reports. Our team were 2 business analysts, 2 developers, and 1 part-time project manager, product owner. And we also had a lot of other people around us, so we had internal shared services, testing, infrastructure, maintenance, business as usual support. We had external shared services. We had internal clients, who was this financial reporting department. We had steering committee, who were sponsors and directors of this project, PMO, of course, and other stakeholders, so other projects that were related to us. And also external clients, auditors, regulators. Why Kanban? Because one of the main principles of Kanban is start with what you do now. And we knew that we cannot change what we have now, which is SDLC. We had to work with it. We couldn't install actually anything else, and Kanban worked really well in this environment. We had multiple shared services, so that was impossible to create a cross-functional team. We had some previous Kanban experience, and it just felt natural. Let's use Kanban from day one. So we had this honeymoon, happy Kanban people, and it was really 1 month of nice, peaceful work. So we basically started working like in most of IT projects, backlog, next design, development, review, testing, done. No. So the first question, we've been asked, why do you need access to database? Because you have all of these Excels. Do you really need to connect to database? Maybe not. 2 months later, infrastructure really is not prepared to work with you guys. And 4 months later, maybe we need to regroup offline to discuss it. So actually 4 months, and we did nothing. So we're not so happy anymore. I mean, we did some progress with design development, but this was where we stuck. And you can see it here, that we stuck in development, and it didn't move. But I was supposed to talk about scaling, and how does it come to scaling. So in Kanban method, we have one very simple rule. You scale Kanban by doing more Kanban. And this is something that I was told from day one of learning about it. So I would like to give you some context of what I'm going to talk about later. So we have this random Kanban board, and there are a couple of dimensions of scaling. So the first one is scaling in width. So we make our process wider. So let's say you have a team of developers, and then you have a team of analysts. So you put them to the left of your process, and this is why you are scaling left. If you have, say, the testing team, then you add this process to the right and you start scaling right. So this way you scale your process to become really end-to-end system from client request to client delivery. The second one is scaling in depth. So this is where you are scaling Kanban across network. So say you have this project where you do Kanban, and later you add Kanban in your HR, you add Kanban in infrastructure, you add Kanban in talent or research and development team. So this is sort of like creating the network, this spider web of services. And then the last one, it's something that people most often associate with scaling, which is scaling high. So this is where you start with the lowest level of, say, task, and then you have higher level, maybe user stories or some bigger pieces of work. Then you have epics, you have projects, initiatives, whatever you call it. And at the end, you have final delivery. So there are these three dimensions, and here we'll focus on scaling wide, and we'll focus on scaling in depth. And I will also very shortly talk about the scaling in high, but this is the least interesting here. Okay, so we've been here where we need to regroup offline and nothing's happening. And this was the moment when I received this picture from one of the developers at my team. We are being recorded, so I'm not going to use the words he used, but he said basically, Radzikowska, get your stuff together. We need to focus, we need to move on. So what we did to move on? So first of all, like they say in Spain, tranquila, keep calm, and Kanban. So the first thing we did, we started visualizing what's blocking us. So we created a very explicit policy, and we created very explicit blocker-related tickets to show what's blocking and how it looks. So we have this name of project, name of idea, name of report, when it was blocked, when it was eventually unblocked, who was it waiting for. So we have very clear path, very clear understanding of who we need to ask for help, when do we need to do our next follow-up on it, and who is responsible. So always one of team members was responsible for unblocking the stuff, or at least following up. We focused on removing these blockers one after another, and it helped us move in. We introduced requirements from business, requirements approval, from business. And we also used this time of, say, waiting to flatten the learning curve. So when we knew that this moment eventually comes and we'll be able to keep working. So we used this time to actually learn more about the scope, the requirements, what they are actually doing. And we built the feedback loops. So this is how our process started looking after introducing some initial policies. We introduced this idea of commitment. You can see it here as this red star. It's better like this. So this was the moment that we had the final decision on what we do next. So this was the commitment, okay, this is what we want to develop, and it happened after this initial stage of analysis of the reports. But at this point, it was just decision of product owner, who was me, and it wasn't ideal. And our feedback, flow of feedback consisted of 3 elements. So we had our daily Kanban meeting, where we basically discussed what's going on. We had retrospectives twice a month, so this is where these 2 feedback venues were sharing feedback between each other. And we also had twice a month steering committee. So this is where I was going to explain myself why it's not going well. And 7 months after the project started, we did our first release, and we have like tons of pictures from this release. Happy, happy people who finally released something. But this was also the moment when we started looking at our lead time, and it looked like a total mess. Like, absolutely. What you see here is that the report, the shortest report, took us 40 days to deliver, and the longest was 220 days. So basically, this is 7 months. But at least we started having some data that we could use, and we discovered new source of feedback. So actually, this first source of feedback was lead time itself. And when we started delivering, this lead time also stabilized, and we've been able to shorten this lead time distribution, to shorten lead time to make it a bit more predictable. And the second source of feedback was one additional element that appeared after we started delivering, which was post-delivery period. And this is where business started finding defects and problems in what we did. So having this feedback, we've been able to categorize our work into 4 main groups. So the first one were new builds, so basically new reports that we just took, analyzed, and started building. And for them, lead time was between 50 and 105 days. Then we had some variants of the reports that we already delivered. For example, a variant for a different client and there was client from US and client from Europe. So they used the same report, but in different variants. So these were much easier to build. And then in terms of what we call failure demand, we received change request. So it was information from business, hey, it's not working as we want it to work, so change it. And the second one were defects. Do you know defects? Have some? And it looks like this in terms of lead time because this was related to this delivery calendar. So if defect was found very quickly, we've been able to include it in the next release. So it was 5 to 10 days. And if we were not able, we had to wait another 2 to 3 weeks. And this is the word of failure demand. So failure demand is anything that we delivered with quality which is not good enough, and eventually it comes back to our process, to our backlog, and we need to spend extra time on it. So on top of that, business decided that they want to expand the scope, but of course no one said it explicitly. But from our 10 initial reports, when we ended this project, we delivered 150. But still 15 months and the same budget. Like, no one gave us more. And this is when we realized that we cannot do it on our own because of the number of this failure demand. Like, if we are going to deal with defects, if we are going to deal with change requests, we won't really have time to build these new reports. So this is when we decided to introduce business a bit more into this whole process. And we redesigned the process to get them on board. And first we created, of course, together with them, something that we called ideation group. So it was the group of subject matter experts from business who helped us to analyze stuff and then make decision on what we do next. We introduced definition of ready, triage, and two-phase commitment, and then step by step what they actually are. So this was our redesigned process. The board on the bottom is the one that I have shown to you already. So we have this first commitment point when we decide, okay, we want to build this stuff. And then the second commitment point during the testing, when we knew that no more major defects are going to be fine, so we can actually commit to delivery dates. And this board on the top was the board of this business ideation group. So this was our first introduction to scaling in depth, where we started expanding our Kanban into other services. And it introduced additional source of feedback, which was this ideation group that started sharing with us information on our development and reporting. Now the triage. So on top of these commitment points, we also introduced the concept of triage, which in this case consists of two questions. So the first question is, what should we build next? And the second question, when should we start working on it? So the answer to the first question happened in the ideation group. So we admitted that we as project team don't have the knowledge to decide what's important for the business. So we let them decide what we should build next. So this is where we only have business input. We have this upstream Kanban decision from actual client. And then the second triage happened right before commitment. So this was decision, when should we start the next thing, when we already knew what's important to build. And it requires input from business and from development team. So business tells us what's important and what's important next. And development team informs about the lead time required for developing this new project reports. And how it looks in practice, this decision making. So this decision around when should we do it, when should we start working on it. And it was already mentioned that I know everything about cheesecakes, but also about other cakes, because I had bakery a long time ago. So I'm going to kitchen. Normally I'm baking a lot, and in the kitchen I have all my Kanban epiphanies. And I created what I call planning recipe. And this recipe consists of 5 steps. So the first 4 steps are or ingredients. What is the lead time? So time that it takes you to deliver something from the moment you start working on it to the moment client says yes. Second ingredient is when is now. So what is your expected start date? The third one, what is desired delivery date? And the fourth one, what is the time frame between now and desired delivery date? So let's say today we have 1st of October. If our desired delivery date is end of October, then our time frame is 31 days. But there is also the 5th recipe, ingredient. So what is customer expectation? And it consists of information like what is the cost of delaying work? Should we change the class of service? So should we change the urgency of work? Or can something wait? And how we did it in practice. So we used good old calendar. What you see here is just an example. So let's say today is 1st of February, this bluish dot. And then between February and mid of April, you have this lead time span. So it was on average 74 days. And then you have a couple more colors here, which indicate the type of report. So I told you that they delivered the reporting annually, biannually, in quarters or monthly. So the green dot indicates the report that is supposed to deliver to be monthly. Then the pink one is quarterly report for the end of March, end of June, end of September, and so on. And we have the yellow one, which is biannual report. So we just put these dots on the calendar and we could see which one is feasible, which we can deliver next. So looking just at this calendar, so we have lead time, we have start date, we have desired delivery date, and we have this time frame. We said that if this is just team decision, we would ignore the pink one because that would require some stretch, and we decide to go with the green one, which is safe, and there is still even like 2 weeks buffer there. So this is when we only consider the first 4 points of the planning recipe. But there is also the last question, what is customer expectation? And what we learned is that this green report is the report for only one client, and it consists of really one small spreadsheet. So the cost of delay is really intangible. This is like half hour of one person work per month. On the other hand, we have this pink report, which is required by 80% of 120 clients, and it the automation of it will save dozens of hours of work. So the cost of delay is very high in this case. So now we have input from our client. We have this upstream input that says what is important to them. So mutual agreement was that we change the class of service. So we make the ping report more urgent, and we complete it before the end of March. But business will allocate some extra people for us to help with analysis and to help with testing. And that's why you need all 5 ingredients. Because if you focus only on this first part, you may choose something that is not really required by the customer, that they don't find the most important at this particular moment. But if you only focus on what customer wants, then we have a problem, because customer wants everything now. So this is the second scenario, is something that I see more often. But that's why we need both of these parts of the recipe, because otherwise you end up with potentially incorrect solution. And this is how we manage the risk. So we did this work in small pieces, in that sense that we didn't plan for 1 year ahead, half year ahead, which just did report by reports. And we constantly work with clients, like all the time. We talk to them, we engage them. Sometimes they were annoyed, but eventually we decreased the number of this failure demands. We understood the cost of delay and the capability that we have to deliver. And this is something that I already mentioned. We decreased the failure demand to actually focus on value-adding work. We also started expanding these ideas more like widespread in this financial reporting department. So we introduced Kanban in a couple of teams who started then reporting to ideation group, and the ideation group reported to, or was in the feedback loop with us. I also mentioned about scaling high, really like one slide, because at some point our project was introduced into what's sort of master project, where we just became part of something bigger at this business. And still at the bottom you have our project board, but then it basically became part of bigger portfolio of projects, this first top line. And then there were also other projects that were involved in this big initiative. So this is basically scaling high. So you have the lower level of one project, and then at the higher level you have portfolio, and within this one project you also have reports, defects, failure demands, some small level work. What can we learn? So this is the picture that I used to use a long time ago when I was trying to explain people that Kanban is actually like a cat. It can fit in very weird spaces. And Kanban fits everywhere, and it will adjust to you. You just need to start with what you do now. And I used to say it in my classes, but I will also say to you, I'm not opening Kanban church here, okay? So you don't need to believe me, you don't need to trust it, you don't need to worship it. Do whatever you do now and apply just small practices, some small tips, anything that will make your life better. And whatever you call it, you may even, I don't know, call it the method of pink unicorn, whatever. If it works for you, it's just the optimal solution. Then you most probably, if you do Kanban, you most probably scale it already. So just do more of it. Don't install like immediately new fancy frameworks because it's fancy. Just do whatever works for you. And to scale Kanban, you just do more of it wherever is your opportunity. Thank you. And these are my pets, so they will help me answering the questions.
if you didn't record your question on the slide, this is the last responsible moment to do this. But we have couple. So let me check the first one. What do you mean by the lead time? What are you measuring? From the request creation or a different time?
Actually, this is the question that we discussed like before the lunch in this Ask the Expert. So you need to write the definition of lead time by yourself. And I gave this example from the classes where I have a team working together. They are sitting together in the class, and I asked them, okay, guys, so what is the point in time you consider as start of work? And you have 8 people from one team, and you have 8 different answers. They don't know when they start. I mean, they know, but each of them understands it differently. So this is really context dependent. You need to define your starting point by yourself. Some common examples. You may consider a starting point whenever item is pulled from backlog to actual work. You may consider a starting point as the moment when you decide, okay, this is what we do next, and we are not going to change our decision. You may also have something that's called customer lead time. So this is where customer signs the contract with you, and they think that the next day you start working on it. And then there is like 1 year in backlog usually, which they consider as work in progress. So if you understand your lead time, where your start point is, you may, for example, use this information to see where the work stuck, because sometimes you may need to analyze it. For example, it's stuck in analysis, it's stuck in backlog, or maybe it's stuck in testing. So it's worth to see where the work is waiting and where the work is actually moving, and put your energy where it's waiting, but this is like a separate topic. So coming back to the original question, you need to define the start point by yourself, the end point by yourself, and whatever is in between is the lead time. But the most basic definition is from where you start to when you finish.
Okay, and then the follow-up question. How did you come with the lead time for the new reports?
So it was based on the data. So we started with new reports. And it was actually one of the main things here. So from day one of our project, we started collecting this information about lead time, about starting and the dates, and what is this time span between. So this is how we came up with this lead time. So these were new reports that we've already delivered.
And we are staying with the lead time.
Okay.
How did you, when you expand the board with the width, why you are not increasing the lead time?
Expanding the board with?
On the width. So you're adding to the left, to the right. How does it impact the lead time?
So again, this is related to what you define as starting point. So actually this part of analysis, it took place before, so we didn't really expand it in terms of the timing, because these were still the same people doing the same work. It was more like identifying where is the upstream, where is the downstream, where is our commitment. And then when we added the ideation group, this was the client side, but they just had separate lead time. We measured it separately. So we didn't show it here.
So you have lead time for the left part of the board, your part of the board?
Yes, sort of. We can say that.
Okay. Did you apply work in progress limit in that small team?
Yes. You could have seen it there. And maybe when you rewatch the recording, you will see it. Not at all of the stages, but at the stages where we had immediate control over. So, for example, development was under our control, testing was under our control, business analysis, but where it involved others, like, for example, not even the client, but say this infrastructure team or some other shared services or even external provider, this is where we didn't limit work in progress because it would be sort of artificial. So we limited work in progress wherever we could actually influence it.
Okay, thank you. How did you calculate the cost of delay?
We didn't. I mean, we didn't put any specific number on it. So it was rather rule of thumb. So when you learn about Kanban method, we have like 4 what we call archetypes of classes of service which are based on cost of delay. So very, very short theoretical part. So we have something super urgent, we call it expedite. This is something what should have been done yesterday. Then you have fixed state items which have a very specific deadline, and when you cross this deadline, normally it doesn't make sense to do it anymore. You have standard work. This is basically normal work, usually first in, first out. And something that's intangible, nice to have. Things like, I don't know, some small improvements, something that it's good to do, but it's not super urgent. Or, for example, something that is very far away in the future, like you need to do it in a year to 5 years. So this is what we applied here. So this was kind of rule of thumb. Is this work intangible, or is this work expedite, so super urgent? Or is it something in between?
Thank you. And did the other team in your company use your experience? So did they learn anything based on this, what you do?
I hope so. We introduced something similar. I showed you at the end this portfolio of projects. So we did something similar in some projects there, but not all of them because like there are a lot of people involved. And then, as far as I know, it was also working after I left because actually this was the time when I wanted to start teaching it and help companies in other way. So yeah, but also the idea was to build something that is sustainable. So even after the project ended, we had this transition period of knowledge to the business. So basically they continued working on it by themselves.
Okay. We have one more question. Oh, even more. How did you call the skull creep of 100 reports? Scope monster?
No, just work.
Next question is, I know that you said that do not ask me about Scrum.
Who was it?
We could do this Scrum as well. Why Kanban specific?
Sorry, one of them?
So we could do this in Scrum as well.
Okay.
This is what you were showing. Why Kanban?
Because I told you that I have no idea about Scrum. So there was other project, and that's why I said I was part-time PM and PO, because I was also part-time PM and PO in this other project. And we pretended doing Scrum there, and I really don't want to talk about it, okay, because you will crucify me. So we did what we knew, and it just worked well with this whole like company-wise SDLC. So that's why. That's actually the only answer. If you can do the same with Scrum, go ahead. I mean, it's your context, right?
You just do this with this. So Kanban is a tool, and there is a question about the tool. What tool do you use for a backlog and generating data based on the backlog?
Database on the it was Jira. Sorry, I was thinking about this other database, but we use Jira. And Excel.
Excel rules.
Yes.
And the last question from me, because you've been showing that the first step was creating the policies for unblocking stuck items. How did you get the support from the company? Because usually this is not like this, that we are creating policy and this works.
I would say it depends on where it's stuck. But, you know, when you have limited time, limited budgets and expanding scope, it's not only like we wanted to do it, it was like in the best interest of a lot of people to actually move things around. So when we started visualizing these blockers, when we started showing like it is blocked here for 3 months, and we just cannot move it on our own. This is where we had this steering committee. So this wasn't only the group of people who were yelling on you, this was also the group of people who actually had some power in the organization to help moving things. So this was one of the things that I was reporting to them. And the expectation was that they are there to help us to influence this change, to talk to proper people and help us unblock it. But first they had to see it and they had to understand what is the impact, what is the delay caused by these blockers on their project and their money.
Thank you. Huge applause for Anna.
Thank you.
You can grab Anna still outside.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you very much for being here, because I know, for me, after lunch is the worst time in the day. I usually fall asleep. So thank you very much that you didn't fall asleep, hopefully. And I will be like walking around, so if you have any specific questions, just grab me. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.